Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're really excited to have you all with us here today. Hello also to the people online at home. Thank you all for joining us. First of all, we really want to thank the Ann Arbor District Library here. We couldn't have done it without them. We have a really great library here in our community, and they do so much for us, and there's a great team behind it. So thank you very much to ADL for co-hosting this with us. So let's get right into it. Can you guys still hear me? All right. All right, so let's get right into it. So for our schedule for today, we're going to do greens, which we're doing right now. Then you're going to hear from each of our panelists individually. They're going to all talk about their journeys and their businesses. And then we're going to have two different breaks during which we're going to hand out samples of their foods. These will be divided into where you're sitting, actually, which half of the room you're sitting, on the left or right. We'll give you guys instructions when the time comes, but you will all be receiving samples for sure, so don't worry about that. We'll also then have a moderator discussion, which we're going to just talk through some pre-curated questions. Have the second sample break, and then at the end, you guys will be able to ask your own questions. So, if you have any, remember to write them down and ask them at the end. So, just a little bit of an introduction about who we are. We're Marble Axe. The Axe stands for Asian Culinary and Tradition Society. So as the name kind of implies, what we're really looking to do is help out local AAPI businesses, whether those are food vendors or artisans or whatnot. We're a 501c nonprofit. We're all unpaid volunteers. We dedicate our time and resources to helping out because we really feel strongly that this is something that we can help the community with. You might know us from a couple of the night market events that we've done. The first one was in June of last year at the Carytown Farmers Market. We really, just feel passionate about bringing this kind of experience to Ann Arbor, the night market experience that is often enjoyed in Asia. We also focus on local businesses primarily, so, that's really just what we're trying to do. Next, we'd like to talk about the sponsors. Thank you very much to Arts Midwest and the National Endowment for the Arts. And of course, also thank you to Rising Voices. They have a table over there if you want to learn about them at all. They're to the right of our Marpo table over there. A little bit about Rising Voices. Recently, they were able to pass an amendment to the Michigan Cottage Food Law. For those of you not familiar with the cottage food law, basically what it is a law allowing people to make and sell food products without being in a commercial kitchen. And mainly it's for pantry food and whatnot. But there are a couple big wins, and this specifically was pushed by Maggie Ho of Phylock Bakery, along with Rising Voices and with Gregory Alexander to get this through. Where are the changes? Now, people who sell things under the cottage food law can have online sales and delivery. They also have raised the income cap for what you sell under the cottage food law. So it's a great win. It really helps get over barriers for small businesses in Michigan. It's a great thing. One other note that they wanted to make sure we call out is that you can have your address registered at the MSU Product Center instead of your home address to maintain some semblance of privacy as well when you're selling these products. So please join me in a round of applause for Rising Voices for making this change. All right, we're going to get right into it to panelist intros, and we're going to hear first from Angela Chi from Sifenlo.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me back there? Is the volume good? Okay, amazing. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much to the Marupo Axe team for organizing all of this. They've been so diligent with planning and doing planning meetings, and just everything has been so organized. So thank you all for that. Also, thank you to the Ann Arbor District Library for hosting us. And also thank you to all of you for coming on a Sunday to hear us share our stories. So it means a lot. My name is Ann LeChi. I'm the founder of 吃饭了, which means time to eat in Mandarin. Can everyone actually try saying 吃饭了? Amazing. It feels like a warm hug to me because that's what my mom said when it was time to eat dinner. As kids, instead of saying I love you, my mom would literally chase after us with scallion pancake wrapped in foil when we were trying to catch the school bus. Instead of saying I love you, my dad would actually just come into my room with a plate of fresh cut fruit. So food has always been the way that my family expressed love. And my mom actually, there's a picture behind us. My mom is from Wuxi. It's a city really close to Shanghai. It's known for making its dishes, even meats, really sweet. And my dad is from Weihai, so it's a coastal city in northern China. They're known for its fresh seafood as well as eating lots and lots of dumplings. And they immigrated to the US in the 90s, and I mostly grew up in New York, and I ate my way around Chinatown, Flushing, as well as, of course, my mom's home-cooked meals. I really never thought I would end up in the food industry. I studied economics and Chinese in college, and I also organized sustainability and fashion shows in New York. I like to say that the best deal that I negotiated was actually with my college friend Singh. Basically, we worked out a deal where I would do the dishes and also get groceries, and I would go to her room with empty Tupperware, and she would fill it with food. So it's probably the best deal I got. Looking back now, though, it often feels like I was chosen by the universe to build 吃饭了 because I lived and studied in China. I have over a decade of experience managing events and operations. I also worked at Mr. Bing. It's a savory crepe startup, Chinese crepe startup in New York. It's actually I think it's not fully operating anymore, but and more recently I worked at Oak and Reel. Most importantly, though, I am a die-hard foodie. So my mom used to bribe me with soup dumplings to go to Saturday school as early as when I was 4. So food, I'm like very, very food motivated. So you could probably imagine when I moved to Detroit how badly I miss like Chinese food. And I'm not talking about like greasy takeout food. I'm talking about like the really comforting, nourishing meals that like my mom used to cook. And when I couldn't find this food, I did what many immigrants and children of immigrants do. So I cooked it. I figured out how to cook it somehow. I didn't go to culinary school. I didn't have a car actually at the time, and I barely knew anyone here, but I miss sitting around a table with good food and good people. And what I started out with was actually inviting 26 fellows. I came to Detroit through a program called VFA, and I cooked a multi-course meal sharing the different regional cuisines in China. After that dinner, I couldn't stop thinking about 2 questions. So number 1, how do I share this food with more people? And number 2, how do I get better at cooking? And I literally started out by posting a small menu in the neighborhood Facebook group, and neighbors would text me their orders and pick up food from my porch. And then local businesses naturally started to ask us, would we pop up? And then people asked us if we could cater, and then do different food making experiences. And that really is how 吃饭了 was born. And today we serve nutritious comfort Chinese food. We call it homestyle Chinese food. It's like lighter, it's less greasy, it's made with a lot of intention. And we always try to offer gluten-free and vegan options. We try to compost when we can and collaborate with the local community for events. Since 2022, we've done over 200 events, 3 chef residencies, pop-ups across Metro Detroit, and occasionally we get to be here in Ann Arbor, which is wonderful. I love every opportunity we get to come here. We've catered for companies like PwC, BCG, Michigan Central New Lab. We've taught dumpling classes, hosted Gongfu experiences, and we won a few pitch competitions along the way. But really what I'm most proud of is when someone takes a bite of our food and says something like, "This tastes like my grandma's." And I know we're doing what my parents did for me. We're saying, "I love you." And this year, This is very exciting. It's been a long time in the making. We're planning to open up our first physical location. It will be a space for home-style Chinese food, specialty Chinese tea and condiments, local AAPI artists' artwork, and community-led cooking classes. It's a space where 吃饭了 isn't just a phrase, it's an invitation. Time to eat, time to gather, and time to care for each other. And thank you so much. You can also scan this QR code up here if you want to follow our journey. We're on most social media platforms, but especially Instagram and Substack. All right, I'm going to hand it off. Thank you.
All right, next we have Rachel Liu from Q Bakehouse and Market.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. It's really great to be here, and thank you for hosting this event, Ann Arbor District Library and Rupo Asks and Rising Voices. Man, I always feel like talking about myself in 5 minutes is always hard. But my name is Rachel Liu Martindale, and I own Q Bakehouse and Market. It's probably 5 minutes west of here, not too far, where Jackson and Dexter and Jackson split. And we just celebrated our two-year anniversary yesterday, so we've been open for 2 years, and yay! Yeah, so it's been a wild ride, and is not exactly the, I guess, linear process to get to running a brick and mortar, but I also, like Angela, started out in not food, and I am an engineer by degree. I studied material science engineering here at U of M, and I did 9 months of my full-time job and realized this is not for me. I don't think I can have a career in this, and I quit my job and worked actually in coffee for a while. I worked in different coffee shops as a barista, and then also kind of just did some soul searching on the side. I worked in marketing at a startup for a little bit. I just kind of did a bunch of random things. And in the evenings, though, ever since I was young, I have always loved baking and have kind of used it as a way to de-stress, to have be like my therapy. And so during this whole period of time, I was continuing to bake and share what I made online through a food blog at the time. And also on Facebook, I would just kind of post pictures of what I made. And funnily enough, yeah, similar to Angela too, that like I had friends start asking me like, oh wait, this has looked really cool. Like, would you be willing to make a cake for my event that I'm doing, or like, could I order some cupcakes or whatever from you? And so that's kind of like how it actually started organically. Was I was just posting food that I was making, and then people started asking me to make things for them. And just slowly, over a decade after, it went from that out of my apartment in Ipsy to doing more pop-ups, to doing like a more permanent pop-up in Bloom Meadworks downtown for about 6 months. And then it turned into our commercial kitchen in Milan that I rented. And it was meant to be kind of like a pseudo retail space, but it was like spring of 2020 that I got that place up and running. And so we opened one weekend, and then lockdown happened, I think, within a week or two after that. And we're just like, okay, this is not gonna work. We're not gonna do this right now. So I basically pivoted completely and just started doing custom orders, wholesale to local coffee shops, and deliveries at the time, because nobody was really leaving their house. So we really quickly shifted and did that for the next few years. I basically just did that. But then coming out of the pandemic and kind of still having that itch to see what a brick and mortar would be like, I started looking for retail spaces, and we found the one that we are in now. It seemed like a reasonable step at the time, because I was like, all right, I think things are kind of going back to normal. And I really have spent the last few years kind of rediscovering my desire to eat Asian food and Asian flavors and incorporating that into my pastries that I was making, and thought that it would be a cool way to be able to share that with the world. So we opened 2 years ago now, and it was a rebrand too, because my business was called Milk and Honey prior to Q Bakehouse. And it was just like a kind of a natural shift of now we're going to be making more Asian American style pastries and food. And yeah, have been doing that for the last 2 years, and it has not been an easy road, but we're still very glad to be doing it every single day. And yeah, so you've caught up to our current day journey, but we are also on social media if you want to follow along on Instagram and Facebook and Substack.
Thank you, Rachel. All right, and last but not least, we have Jaspreet from Zaica Life.
I just want to say I got nothing. I mean, you should have warned me about these two. Wow, that's amazing. Can we have another round of applause for these wonderful, resilient, amazing women who are sitting? I'm just honored to be included with them. And I'd heard of them, but I actually just overwhelmed to meet them in person. And thank you all for coming. I would be home watching the Olympics if I were you, so appreciate you guys coming. I'll just, I'm going to steal her material and then do my speech. I'm also not only a foodie, but I come also from a foodie family. In our home, what I remember in my childhood was that I used to actually live in a very large home with all my uncles and aunts and cousins, so I always had like anywhere from 10 to 15 cousins to eat with at every meal. And I thought everyone ate like that, so that's what I expected. And then I came to the US and I realized it didn't quite work that way. But fortunately, I just happened to be born into the right family. We always had cooks and chefs making food, but at the same time, my mom was an amazing cook. She was famous for her cooking. Many of my dad's friends called her the lady with the golden hand. My dad was an amazing cook, is an amazing cook. So in our family, interestingly, the women cooked during the week and the men cooked over the weekend. So I made my first dish, I think, when I was 10 years old. And all I had to do, my mom said it's easy. All you gotta do is keep boiling milk until it evaporates. I said I could do that. Little did I know that stirring milk for an hour till it evaporates without burning it is really an art, not a science necessarily. So that was my first memory of cooking. I went to school at Eastern. I got 3 degrees from there a long time ago. I'm not going to tell you when. I started dreaming about a restaurant probably 35 years ago. I lived in Ann Arbor for 41 years. My dad beat me to it. He opened a restaurant in New Delhi. His restaurant was awarded best in the country 5 years in a row. So it was called Park Baluchi. They had features done on them in Photos and many of the other National Geographic and all those magazines. And the one thing that was special about his restaurant is that there was drama. They used to serve kebabs on a flaming sword at your table. There was innovation. They would serve kebabs like chicken breast stuffed with lamb meat that other people weren't doing at the time. But the most important thing I remember is that he just cared about the details. He would eat his lunch there every day at the restaurant. And the chefs knew that, there was going to be an earful if things weren't perfect. He is a very kind man, but still, he had very high demanding standards. And the other most important thing and vivid thing that I remember is in his restaurant, which is not the case in many restaurants, some of us know in the business, you could go in the kitchen and eat off the floor. And especially if in an Indian restaurant, that's even more unbelievable. So the pandemic happened. I kept dreaming, did my random things like Rachel. I'm still doing random things, by the way. And then I thought back to my grandfather. My grandfather was a farmer before he became an industrialist. He was a very successful man and built an empire, basically. But he was a farmer before that. And I really felt like I wanted to go back to my roots. And especially when you're confronted with your mortality, you really rethink how your life should unfold. So I did that. I said, well, I don't know much about farming yet, but I can work with farmers. So I started reaching out to farmers that I knew were growing amazing spices because I said, you know, I like to cook and I'm a decent cook, but these spices that are available in the stores here, they just don't feel right. They don't taste right. They don't smell right. And then I started traveling to, you know, meet farmers. Some of them are my cousins. And one of my cousins, he used to own a trucking company in Toronto, just quit it, moved back to his village and became a farmer again. And he said it's the best decision he ever made in his life. And I realized that, you know, a lot of our food is not clean. So I started the business actually for myself. I was my first customer. And then I realized that there are probably, I wasn't sure, but then I found out that there are other people who are seeking that for themselves. And there were many times, I'm sure you have no idea what I'm talking about. There were many times I thought, I can't do this, you know, with my day job and this, it's just too much. I'm not doing it justice. I can't do it. We've had our ups and downs. But then I thought back to our farmers, and I couldn't let them down. I met a lot of farmers who are just basically depending on their farm income to survive. We work with a nonprofit in India. They support battered women and help them become farmers so they can separate from their abusive husbands. I could go on about those stories, but I think my time would be up. So we work with nonprofits that, you know, work with the poorest of the poor, the absolute marginal, you know, portions of society in very poor villages, and we try to support them with handicraft products and, for example, our, you know, reusable tea bags, cotton tea bags, and things like that. So I just couldn't. I had to dig deep. I had to do what I had to do, and I realized this was more of a spiritual, emotional journey for me than a financial one. So that's where we're at. And we're going to keep climbing the mountain. I was in the Himalayas last year. I'm going again next month. But I learned a very important lesson from my guide. He said, just focus. We were hiking 26 kilometers in one day of very steep mountains, and it was not the best weather. And if those of you who've been in the mountains know, that can change in less than 5 minutes. And when I thought that I would just fall down and just go to sleep, my guide just said, you know, just focus on putting one foot in front of the other, and you're going to make it. And I made it. So I'm just honored to be here with you and with these wonderful women who basically, I think I'm telling your story too, right? So, but thank you all.
Thank you, Jasper. All right, and we're now into our first break, our first sample break. So if you're sitting on this side of the room, congratulations, you guys get your samples first. Stay in your seats. We'll have our volunteers come around shortly with 2 trays, one from Q Bakehouse and one from Fan LeChi. Please pick one out of the 2 that you'll like. If we do have leftovers at the end, we will also hand those out. But for now, right, just to make sure that everyone does get a sample, just please pick one of those and indicate to the volunteers which one they would like. And we also have hand sanitizer available if you would like with Jingran over here. For the left side of the room, if you guys would like, there's actually free blood sample screenings. We have the University of Michigan College of Pharmacy here with us today, and they are very generously offering free blood sugar screenings. I believe they also have some educational panels back there. Go on and take a look. I think it's good, right, to know your numbers if you don't already. So we'll be back in about 15 minutes. Thank you. we're gonna resume the conversation here. So first we're gonna have some pure create questions, like we talked about. So let's get right into it. First one, do you feel there's any unique or unexpected challenges to being an AAPI food entrepreneur in particular? Tell us about your experience with them. So Angela, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, I can totally do that. I feel like there's a lot of unique challenges, but I think one that like comes to mind first is just that oftentimes, especially when I'm in Detroit, a lot of times like I'm one of a few Asians in the room or like the only Asian person in the room. And a lot of times people don't really know what our food is, actually. I think people know Chinese food, but a lot of people, when they experience Chinese food, it's Chinese takeout, it's Chinese American food. And I think a lot of my work, actually, and I've taken it on with like full embrace, is like a lot of it is education. And not getting offended when someone says something, like even though it feels like I can feel like myself being like, let's say someone, I guess an example is like a lot of times people will ask us like, you know, if we make General Tso's chicken, but we don't. And General Tso's chicken is really delicious, but the thing that I guess I want to focus in on is like not getting offended and really just, it was a genuine question. A lot of times people have genuine questions like that, and what we're here to do is also share other, like, I guess the food that I grew up eating, and also the fact that, like, my story does not represent all of everyone that has parents from China, because we all have really individualized experiences, and the food and cuisine is so diverse. So I guess, like, those are some of the challenges that I face sometimes with Shifan, but I also think it's a privilege to be able to share, like, my story and also talk about Chinese food in the way that I do. So, yeah.
Unexpected, right? I think a lot of things, but the biggest unexpected thing I encountered is that people are a pain. Actually, what I'm trying to say is that I don't think that I knew how to communicate as well as I needed to when I started this business. Because it was, I think you guys might agree that our journeys all started with dreams, right? Like a vision of what we aspired towards to be for ourselves and our families and our heritage and, you know, the people around us. It took me a long time to realize that not everyone's gonna have that reality that they work with. So how do I keep my dreams contained in a way that still allows other people to connect with them? I'm still working on it, by the way. I will say that I'm kind of going to buck the question a little bit. I think there were more unexpected pleasures than surprises for me. And I can tell you that, like, there are many times where I have been standing at the farmer's market in our stall, and I've literally cried with some people that have become dear friends, even though they're Saturday friends. I think that food has a way of connecting people so deeply at a level that's inexplicable, and that's been amazing. Our farmers are just my heroes. I mean, our cumin guy has been growing cumin for 11 generations. Just think about that for a second. They care so much about the earth and the environment. I talked to my cousin. He developed this novel way that he found from a visiting farmer who was 88 years old, because he was having to deal with thrips. Couldn't figure out how to deal with thrips. He didn't want to spray chemicals. And this guy told him about this plant, which he then started growing. It's called taramira in Punjabi. And he said, all you have to do is grow the plant, take the leaves, juice them, put a few drops of that in a gallon of water, or 5-gallon drum, and spray it on your crops. And it's totally safe, organic plant material. The thrips were gone in 2 weeks. The woman who grows our black pepper, she's a PhD scientist who quit her very prestigious lab job to become a farmer 30 years ago. And when she started farming, there were these beetles that were eating the pepper leaves. It would have been easy for her, knowing her chemical background, that she could have found some even organic spray to spray on those pests. But guess what she did? She essentially spent 6 months researching those so-called pests, found plants that they liked eating better than the pepper leaves, and planted those. Now, how's that for treating the earth with respect and all beings on it with respect? So I will say that, there's the day-to-day of, trying to communicate people, or, I have plenty of friends who have run restaurants who, if the dishwasher doesn't show up, guess who's doing the dishes? But for me, I think the unexpected has been more emotionally uplifting and eye-opening than I ever thought in my life.
Thank you for sharing. Rachel?
Man, I think similar to Angela, that I think like the lack of representation a lot of the times, being an Asian business owner, and I think particularly Asian female business owner, there's not many of us. So I think that's why we're cling to each other when we find each other. But yeah, I think it's also really, it is like one of those things that it's like a challenge, because it's hard that there's just not much representation, but then it also, on the flip side, is a privilege to be able to kind of, I guess, like be one of them and hopefully pave the way for more to come along. And this isn't directly related to Q in particular. We thankfully were able to get like an AAPI grant, and we crowdfunded to like help push us to be able to open towards the end. But I did work when I was working for the startup, it was a female-owned startup in the tech space, and I just saw a lot of the challenges that she was going through being a female CEO and trying to get funding. And it was just, I think, really discouraging to see just her continue to attempt and multiple rounds, and just see like how the way that she was like treated, and I think like the way that funding works a lot of times for females and minority owned businesses. So I have like been weary to try in different at different times where I've thought, okay, maybe we could use some like take out a loan to be able to help the business a little bit more, or if I wanted to expand the business, or if I wanted to kind of have an offshoot of the business in a different way, would I feel comfortable tackling that road of what it will look like to get funding or investment or anything like that. And I think I feel daunted by it, just knowing that just me in general am who I am. And so I think that's something that we might have to cross as the time comes. Something else that was unexpected, and I think maybe some of you probably know if you followed along since we opened, was I won't go into a bunch of detail, but we just had a lot of issues with a particular person really taking issue with like the smells of the food that we make. And that, I think, is challenging as well, just because I felt like I was particularly trying to be just very neutral in the situation, but there were just a lot of instances where it was brought up multiple times that it was particularly like the garlic and the chilies that we use in our food. And I understand that like they are very strong and like pungent smells, but they are also kind of like the comforting smells of like what I am used to growing up, the food that my parents made and the food that like we love to make, and I think personally smells amazing. So like whenever it smells like that in our kitchen, I'm always like, oh, this is the best. So we just had a lot of issues with that in the first year of being open, and like having the city involved, and like having to unexpectedly shut down our storefront because of a lot of, again, just a lot of like complicated things that I wasn't expecting, and things that I am just not aware of in terms of just architectural stuff of like opening a space. So I wouldn't say that necessarily is like me being Asian American or an AAPI specific issue, but in some sense it felt like it, and because of the just the nature of the food that we make and the nature of this of what we offer and the things that feel like comforting to me, like the flavors that we use, the even the like the chili crisp that we make in particular has like 3 different chilies that we source, and we really care about like just what goes into our product, and I do think that it felt really challenging to kind of have somebody say that it smelled bad, or it kind of reminded me of like just like being in middle school and having my lunch being made fun of, and I do think that. Yeah, I don't know if that would have been a different experience if it weren't for me being an Asian-owned business and like our food being Taiwanese Chinese food, but that felt like an unexpected challenge that we experienced in the last couple of years. That honestly is kind of still ongoing sometimes, even though we've like kind of come to a solution and have figured out something that has worked. We do still get complaints like fairly regularly, actually. So yeah, so I think that was something that was really challenging in the beginning that perhaps I think is related.
Thank you all for sharing. Yeah, go ahead.
Who doesn't love garlic? Come on, guys.
All right, thank you all for sharing. Our next question, what's something that you would share with someone who's looking to start their own food business journey today? Jasper, you want to start us off?
Get a lot of Pepto-Bismol. Follow your dreams. You know, that's what I believe in. That's what I'm doing. And know that, I mean, if you think that life is going to be hard, I mean, just look at your life now. If you're coasting and you're living on a beach somewhere, surfing and, you know, eating fish tacos every day, so yeah, go for it, you know, keep doing that. But most people I don't know are not in a space that's wonderful anyways. So follow your dreams. I had a call last week from someone who's in my opinion, a legend at what she does, and she called me wanting to know how she could import containers of something, and I told her don't do it. What I'm trying to say is, if you want to do that, please, but do your homework, right? I mean, we live in a society that's highly regulated, but we also live in a society where diversity is not necessarily celebrated, regardless of us being in Ann Arbor. There are going to be speed bumps in anything that you do, but the best way to encounter or prepare for those speed bumps, you're not going to be 100% prepared for whatever else is going to come your way. But what you want to do is do as much research as possible. Certainly talk to people who've done it before, specifically in the area that you're in. And I think I managed to talk my friend out of importing those containers that she was, because I told her what the FDA regulations were and how she could basically lose, $50,000 down the tubes if she did that. I didn't want to tell her not to do it, but I told her to find and think of alternate ways. I think it's fabulous that you are an engineer, because engineers are used to designing for problems and find solutions. I also used to be an engineer, but a software engineer. I think an engineering or analytical mind is important, and if you don't have it, then find one, So I'm actually exploring a new venture. We're trying to open our first tea house. But I'm clear that I'm a dreamer, so I'm not going to be able to do it by myself. So I'm talking to a friend of mine who's the doer, so that I can...
Things that in the beginning can feel really overwhelming. So I think there are a lot of actual nice free state resources to also, we can talk about that too later on, but that you can to use as resources. But I think that even still, to this day, I'm always kind of scrambling to figure out if I am doing things right in terms of like the business side of things. And I do think that there's a lot of resilience that is needed. There's something that, like, when you go into it, there's going to be stuff that happens every single day, probably that is not expected, that is probably upsetting in some way. Like, you'll go in and the fridge is broken, like we mentioned, or something, somebody doesn't show up for work, or like your distributor dropped off all of your ingredients, but actually, no, there's no tomatoes this week. So, and like, you don't know until the very moment that you're not expecting that that's not going to be there. And so you have to just pivot really quickly, or we have to send somebody out to go get it. It's just like, there's a lot of like moving pieces and parts and things that that are unexpected every single day that I think people also don't expect going into a business, that like, you just think, oh yeah, we're going to bake and it's going to be amazing and people will come buy it and it's just going to look amazing. And I think there's just a lot of the day-to-day things that come up that are honestly quite just like tedious and annoying, that are behind the scenes of like the final kind of beautiful thing that you see showcased, especially on social media or whatever. So I always do caution people to just really kind of know what you're getting into, know what is involved, especially with the administrative business side of things. Either you'll have to learn a lot, or you can also hire somebody to do that for you too, but they cost a lot of money. So I think a lot of, for me, it's just like I had to really kind of hit the ground running and figure a lot of things out through trial and error.
I appreciate so much both of your responses. I'm like not even sure if I have that much to add on. Like genuinely, like I feel like for me, like if anyone ever asks me, I'm always like, just get started, however that looks like. I think sometimes what happens, a lot of my friends right now, they have a lot of dreams, but they work, their 9-to-5 job. And I can see that they're super excited about the idea, but they'll just like, every time I see them, the next time they're still talking about this idea and they haven't done anything. And I'm almost just like, just do it, just whatever. Like, if you want to bake this thing, just bake it and you can share it with some friends. It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't even have to sell it. Like, I think just starting really small, that's like my thing. Just like, I almost just want to push someone and be like, just do it. So that's the first thing. And then after you do it, I think the main thing is being critical within yourself, like, and asking yourself, like, what parts of it do you like and what parts do you not like, and kind of move on from there. Because I think it's actually really important that it doesn't matter what other people think, but it's like what you want to do, because it's your life. And I think sometimes what happens is I even see it with myself, like when I'm building my business, I'm always really conscious of, am I building this, like, am I still enjoying at least most of it? Like, does it still feel like it's heading towards my own vision? Because you kind of get lost in the sauce somewhere, because other people want you to do this and that, and you start doing all these other products, and they're not what you're passionate about. They're not even what you want to make. And like, it's important that there's like a balance of like, yes, you're creating maybe a product or service for an end consumer to, consume, but then also like, you're doing this. It's all your energy. It's your life, and like, you have to really love it in some way or another, because like, both Jasper and Rachel had mentioned, like, it gets really hard. Like, things just don't work. You're tired, you get sick, and like, you have to really like it and love it to be able to withstand all those ups and downs. So, I would say that, and continuing on in the journey, like, I think the next question is almost like, okay, this is something you really want to do. And a lot of people start off with like their full-time job and do this as a side gig, but like, I think I've had friends that kind of like have seen me do pop-ups and they want to start doing pop-ups and they're like, I'm going to quit my job. I'm like, do not quit your job. Do not quit your job. Because I think people see like a long line at a pop-up or an event. They're like, okay, she's making bands. She's stacking, like, right? But like genuinely, it costs so much to put that event on. Sometimes I might have a line and I might not even make that much, like any profit. Like, it just really depends. And that's also like what Rachel was saying, like the business side of things. Like, you don't realize, like, a napkin, like someone like accidentally knocks over the stack of napkins, like that was like $5. Like, and like, it's just everything costs money, and just like being cognizant of that, like, can you actually live off of this in addition to loving what you're doing? That might have been too much for everyone, but that's just like my genuine experience. But I still think you should follow your dreams. Like, Is it hard? Yes, but I'm so happy to be here. Like, I am so honored that I get to like speak in front of you and talk about like the food I grew up eating. Like, this is like a privilege, and I'm happy to be here. So like, is it worth it? Yes. But is it hard? Yes.
Thank you all. We only have one life, right? So we gotta make sure that we're following our passions, but it takes a lot of grit, and I think all three of you have just shown us there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that and the work you have to put in to make this successful. It's a good lead-in to our next question. So what's one thing you wish your customers would know about your business? I think you guys have covered a little bit of it, so maybe we can talk about the second follow-up question, which is, what are some ways that customers can support you guys that most of us might not think about? Rachel, you want to start?
Okay, I want to try to be concise so I don't ramble. When I initially read this question, I was like, what do I want people to know? It's that like running a business is so expensive. And then Angela kind of talked about that a little bit. There's a lot that goes into the final thing that you see in front of you when you go into a business. And I think a lot of times I feel self-conscious about pricing and just all that stuff, just because I don't know, like, how do we price well so that like we're actually sustainable as a business, but then like also are not just astronomically expensive or whatever, so it feels like there's always this like really, really hard line and balance to find. But for us, even just being able to give some examples, so like our what we sell in our cooler, we put them in clamshell containers, and each clamshell container is $1 for us. So like, I don't think people always realize that, like, oh yeah, like, why does this tart cost $9? As like, one of those dollars is just the container that you're getting. And I think like that the packaging aspect of it is so wild, because it is so expensive. Just like the clamshells that we have, all the bags that we have to put the pastries in, and then the bag that the bags go into, and just like all the things, and like even the stickers, they all cost money. And then obviously ingredients too for us. So we've been open for 2 years now. We have our like product lists and ordering lists from when we first opened 2 years ago, and then comparing the pricing from now. There are certain ingredients that we have that have gone up double in price since then, and like that's a 200% increase in price that obviously we do not want to push onto the customer, but there's just so many things like ingredient wise that have just like just keep increasing and increasing on our end. And well, how do we balance like just the extra cost that we have now to make a product while still making it reasonable for the customer? So that is something that I think like now as a business owner, I understand so much more when I go to businesses and I like see like what people price their things at. I'm like, I get it now, like why it costs that, like why it costs that much, or like how whatever the price that is, like I understand. And so I think that's something that I think the general consumer doesn't always think about. That's helpful to know in terms of like why things are priced the way that they are. I would say most of the time, especially when you're going into a small local business, they are not trying to price gouge you. There is a reason why it costs what it costs, and so I think like it's helpful to keep that in mind. And then in terms of supporting, I think like for me, it's just, I always tell people, just continue to support your local businesses. Like that is just the biggest thing. If you come in and support us, like that is immediately supporting our team of 6 people. And like that is my biggest recommendation, is just to think of us, or not just us, obviously, but like think of the local businesses that you frequent and just continue to frequent them. And that is very much like supporting the people who work there, which is amazing. And I think like that's cool to be able to keep everything as local as possible. But it is really encouraging to me when we have regulars that come in, and I know that like these are the people that are kind of sustaining our business and sustaining the people that I employ, and I would just want people to remember that that is what they're doing when they come in, and it's not just buying a pastry. It's not just, I mean, I hope you come in for the pastries and the food, but knowing that like when you do purchase these things that you are directly supporting the 5 people that work for me. So I think that that is something to just remember when you walk in our doors.
I'm going to say if you haven't been to Q Bakehouse, you need to go and try the pastries. They're amazing. So, I have one thing to say. Please don't use tea bags. They're not good for you. So I guess my take's a little bit different. I feel like we want to be in a symbiotic relationship with our customers. We're here to support you. So if you give us that opportunity and that grace for allowing us to support you with not just products, but with knowledge and information, that would be a wonderful thing for us. And we're very fortunate that our customers value our integrity and trust us in terms of the products that we provide. I think if there was one request I would make is just try to know the food that you're consuming, because the majority of the food that's available in a supermarket is really not good for you. I'm not going to get on that soapbox, even though I was telling David that I might, but I think just wholesome, simple, nutritious, wonderful food can really make a difference in your lives. And I've done enough research on and we're actually in the process of gathering a team to deploy content on our website based on Ayurvedic research, how food can be used as medicine. And I'll give you just one example. I went to one of our potential farms 2 years ago. They're known for growing some of the best pineapple in the world. I'm still trying to convince them to ship us some pineapple, but they won't because they sell out their crop with the local population. But while I was there, I came across this herb that they grow at their farm based on the sort of the head of the family who had just passed away a year before I went there. And this herb they provide, mostly free to people to treat severe cancer. And I was fortunate that I got 4 doses from them and gave it to 4 of my, nears and dears, and all 4, the doctors it blew their mind that the cancer had almost stopped. I mean, it just, like I'm shaking when I just think about that right now. That doesn't mean that they're fully cured or anything like that, but like one of them is my cousin brother-in-law, and his PSA, if you guys know about prostate cancer and how it's measured, was 400. And then in addition to his regular allopathic medicine, Western medicine regimen, I sent him this powder that he drank as a tea for 3 weeks, and his PSA went to 0.4. And the doctors couldn't believe it. I actually am arranging another dose next week for a dear friend of mine who told me yesterday that her father is in stage 4 prostate cancer. So it's just one example. We sell some really fine saffron that we get from Kashmir from a 3rd-generation saffron farmer. And for those who don't know, saffron has been used as an antidepressant for 1,000+ years. And most people don't know that. So my biggest request is the more you know about what you eat, and the more, I remember, like before I started the business, would go to the farmer's market a couple of years before I started the business, and we started at the market. So I'm really grateful to the Ann Arbor Farmer's Market for giving us the chance. And I remember starting in November of 2020 with my younger son, and we had 4 products on the table. And there are customers still today that remember that day where we had 4, and now we have 100 plus. Just know that what we eat and what we breathe and who we're with really determine the outcome of our lives in terms of how good we feel. And so the best way I think you can, like I would certainly say, know your farmer. There are plenty of stickers in this town that know that, but I never really fully understood the meaning of that until I became friends with all the farmers that sell at the market. And my dad, when I took him there before I started the business, who, as I've told you, was an accomplished restaurateur. And one other thing I'll say about his restaurant, that he actually did not have a freezer in his restaurant, which for an Indian restaurant is unbelievable. But he insisted that all the meats and fish and all those things would have to come every day, and they'd get thrown out if they didn't get used. They were not, maybe a day at most, but no more than that. And I took him to the market, this is about 4 or 5 years ago, and he got mad at me. He goes, "Why are you paying 3 times as much for that tomato?" I said, "Look, would you rather spend an extra $100 a month on food that's gonna heal you? Or would you rather pay the doctor $2,000 an extra a month to heal you? It's your choice." And then finally, it sunk in, and it kind of made sense. But yeah, please, know the food that you eat and value it emotionally, spiritually, and physiologically.
I'm just taking in everything you're saying, genuinely, because food is medicine, and that's so true. I feel like, I think I misread the question when I was looking at it, but I think this is kind of related to the question, but it's more answering what I feel like I wish people knew about food businesses after having worked in it for a little bit. And that is the magic of when everything is actually working. When you don't notice that there's anything wrong, how much went into that, you having that experience. And I think it's only after working in food and working at so many different businesses, because I'm trying to learn as I'm going. I've never, worked in a commercial kitchen before, but now I've worked in several. I had never served before. I've never managed front of house, and I've recently got that experience. But just, it's so many people were involved in just one, you walking through that door, someone greeting you, the floor is clean, this, everything was wiped, it's just, it's so incredible. It's literally magic to me now. I'm when I walk into some of my favorite places, I'm wow, this is incredible. I'm how much training went into this? How many SOPs have they written to make sure that everyone knows where they need to be and what to say? And then a lot of it is the magic of people, because people, we're all special in our own ways, and the fact that we all go through our own lives, and to be able to show up for people, guests walking in, it's really genuinely magic. It's just what I think. And in terms of anything to help the business, I honestly think if you give small businesses honest feedback, I actually think for me that's super helpful. I remember early on, we just started doing pop-ups. We used to hold our rice in those awful chafing dishes. If you ever use them, they cut your hands. They're the cheapest chafing dish, and they're rectangular, and you probably see them a lot at events, but we stored our rice in there because we didn't have a commercial rice cooker yet, so I cooked multiple batches in a small rice cooker and dumped it in there, and the rice kind of started to dry out after a little bit, and it was really nice. Now a good friend, she let us know our rice was a little dry, and afterwards, actually at some point, someone actually donated and gifted us a rice cooker, which was really nice. But that's helpful to know, because I want to make sure I'm putting all this love and care into the food. I want to make sure you're enjoying your food, and sometimes I think people get nervous about delivering critical feedback, but genuinely sometimes slip-ups happen, and we want to make sure you're not going away being this is disgusting. Sometimes genuine human error happens, so don't be afraid. I mean, there are people who don't like genuine feedback, but I think most people who love what they do and they're doing it because they feel like they're serving people, give them the genuine feedback. And if it's positive, that's also wonderful, because that sometimes is the reason why I'm still going, because some days are so hard, and when someone gives you that, this reminds me of my mom's food. Thank you so much. And like, you can see the tears coming up in their eyes. Like that is, yeah, that's like so lovely. Like I honestly, that has kept me going several times. So I think just to keep it concise, that would be my point of feedback, yeah.
Thank you, guys. All right, and we're a little bit over time, so let's just do a couple sentences if you guys don't mind. Angela, I feel like you already kind of delved into this one a little bit with your answer. If you could start us off, what's your favorite thing about being a food entrepreneur? Is it those moments that you talked about, or is there anything else?
I would say definitely mostly it's you guys. Like genuinely, I think it's like the people I get to work with, the customers I get to talk to. And one little snippet of a story is we did a hatch competition. It's a Detroit competition where they give out $100,000 towards a brick and mortar. We didn't win, but we were one of the top 10, and there was this little girl who came up to our booth. We made like bok choy and like a garlicky sauce. She literally ran up and took like 5 samples, and it just felt so good to see like kids like enjoying their vegetables. Like it's just, I think sometimes in school the way they cook it, I don't know what they do. It's brown, it smells bad. I don't know how long it's been sitting for, but it's just like I feel like naturally like we love eating fresh foods. I think sometimes it's just like, I feel like we should be feeding our kids like, good and fresh foods and what you were saying. And now I'm like, I need to know where you buy your stuff because I'm like, I'm sure you've done all the research, but yeah, I'm gonna pass it on.
I get to eat well. That's all I'm gonna say. And of course the friends that I've made and the difference in people's lives that we seem to have made. So that's just precious. And it's beyond. I mean, I'll say it. You guys probably got it by now. If you're thinking of doing this, don't do it for the money. Do it for something more than that, and it will reward you more than money can if you do it. So yeah.
Rachel?
I feel like they already said what I was going to say, but yeah, I think it's so rewarding to be able to do what I love and do it with people that I love, and also just like build relationships with people who come in and who also love our food. And I think that's just like such a rewarding thing that we get to witness every single day, is people coming in and telling us that they love whatever they got. And it's just like such a joy to be able to be a part of people's day, to bring some joy to them. And it also brings us a lot of joy to serve people and give them something that they find joy in. So I think that's my answer.
Let's give a round of applause for our panelists. All right. We're going to give them a bit of a break. And now, if you're saying on this side of the room, I know last time we were able to get the samples out, so what we'll do is start on this side of the room. And if there are extras, we will come over back to you guys on this side of the room again. You'll be able to pick from Q Bakehouse's black sesame and red bean butter mochi, or ZaicaZaica's masala chai and saffron cookie. And as just a reminder for those of you sitting over here, once again, we have blood screenings that are free from the University of Michigan School of Pharmacy. Definitely recommend you check them out. Thank you. We'll be back in 15. All right, now we're going to get into audience Q&A from all of you. Before we get right into it, I do want to just make a quick announcement that we do have surveys. So if you are looking to exit at any point in time, we would really appreciate if you guys could fill those out. They are in your pamphlets, or you can fill them out digitally online. They really mean a lot to us. Every single survey helps us a lot with our grants, as well as understanding your needs and your wants of what we do with the nonprofit. So, visit our table over there, and they can also help you out if you have any questions. All right, if you have a question, please raise your hand, and Bennett will get you over. Cool.
Hi there. I wanted to, first of all, thank you for being here, and thank you for being so vulnerable to share your stories. I know it's probably not the easiest thing to do. But I have a background in commercial lending, and then I've also had 2 businesses, and one I closed to start the second one, and the second one last March we just sold successfully. So know that you commit yourself, you have a passion, you can do it. Your stories are amazing. These are not all of my thoughts in order, but I have thoughts and questions. I'll make it quick. A lot of your comments made me think about David Chang's Ugly Delicious. I don't know if you guys are aware of his show, but he is always trying to educate people on the smells and trying different things and doing different things. And I just want to encourage you to continue to be authentic with your flavors, because Americans need to be educated in the different cuisines of the world. Don't dumb your food down. Don't dumb your dream down. Give it to us the way that you think we should give it, or the way you think that we should receive it, because it's given with love. And that's why you're special. For the business piece of it, I would say any entrepreneurs here, look at Business Model Canvas if you haven't already done so. Also look at Lean Startup. When you're building out a physical location, always put 10 to 20% aside for unexpected things. When we built our dental office, we literally had to spend $10,000 in the last week or 2 just to bring HVAC, or the heating and cooling system, up to code. And I didn't listen to our lender, who said, you need X amount of dollars. I said, no, I need about 80% of that, because the last 10 to 20% I'm gonna put aside for those unexpected things. So luckily we had the money aside to do that. And then also know that those things are negotiable. So if your builder or your lender is not including you in those conversations with the fire inspector, when they come to do those types of upgrades, negotiate, split the costs, and don't take no for the final answer. The other thing, keeping your dream alive, I would say make sure that you read Artist's Way by Julia Cameron if you haven't already done so, because it's a great read in terms of making you know that you have dreams that you're here to give to the world. Partner with people whose strengths are your weaknesses for a couple of reasons: for work-life balance, workload balance, and although an expense, it's someone that you need to share ownership with. If done strategically, it will probably be more effective, efficient, and probably more profitable, excuse me. So my question is, how does living here in the States impact the way that you're able to make authentic dishes?
Thank you for your question. Anyone want to take that on? All right, Jasper, go ahead.
So actually, I think I really started to discover my authenticity when I moved here 41 years ago. Because I was a fish in water, but the water didn't exist for me, because that's all I knew. I only recognized that I was in water once I was taken out of it. And then I, did gain the freshman 20 when I went to the dorms. And I realized that Yeah, I kind of liked hamburgers, but they were not quite as good as the food that I grew up with. So I became mostly vegetarian, and I started to think about food because one of my best friends in college said, well, I have an organic garden. I said, what does that mean? And I had no idea how food was grown. And I started to learn about food chemicals and sprays and pesticides, and I started to, at some point when you're in a new environment, you tend to adapt to it because you want to fit in. So I did that for a while, and then I started to reflect deeply about, I got to a minimum comfort level, let's just say. Then I started to reflect on, well, what do I miss? And then I started researching food, and then pretty soon I started to be called the food Nazi by my family. So, but yeah, I mean, so the interesting thing is, it's like, once I started down that path, there was no stopping, because like I learned about how my grandparents used to eat, and I remembered the food that I ate as a very young child and what my grandparents, how they would cook, my grandmothers at that time. Even though I turned vegetarian 25 years ago, I remember going to the butcher with my uncle, where the goat had literally been killed 2 hours before, and it was hanging on a hook without refrigeration, and the butcher was hacking at it, and I thought to myself, how the heck has he not lost any fingers yet? So yeah, I mean, and then when my dad opened his restaurants, I actually had the privilege of going there and exploring food with his chefs, who were so gracious and didn't treat me like the spoiled son of the owner. But I would like sit with them and talk with them for hours about food. And they would actually, based on our discussion, create some recipes based on some of the direction that I gave them. And actually, some of those recipes did make it to the restaurant menu. So yeah, I mean, it's like learning how to ride a bike. Once you start riding, then you're not going to fall off. You're going to continue, and or there's a saying, Indian saying, that once the lion has tasted blood, he's no longer going to eat grass. So, in my case, it's the opposite. Once the goat has tasted grass, she's not going to eat the unnatural feed. So, but yeah, I mean, it's just. And then I started to think about how I feel when I eat this stuff. And now I'm to the point where I can't go to a restaurant and just eat anything. Because it just, like I'll be up half the night just with stomach pains or something. So yeah, that's how I did it.
I just love your storytelling. It's just so fascinating. I was gonna say that I feel like I've always had kind of it's been a journey. I think growing up, I was born in the US, actually in Kansas, and I moved around a lot as a kid. We've lived in places where I was the only Asian person for miles, and I've also been in a place where most of the school was Asian. So like, I was gonna say, I would say for the most part, in the beginning, when I was younger, I had a hard time figuring out like my culture, my identity, and like, I knew I was Chinese, we spoke Chinese at home, but then in school, everything was English, and I would say that for the most part, there was definitely a time where like I asked my mom to trade, her thermos-packed rice and spare ribs with like a sandwich. And then I would say around like high school, college time, I think I wanted to learn more about like my culture and history, and I think that's actually kind of like a journey that a lot of people follow. And I studied Chinese in college, and I think it wasn't until I actually got to live in China and study in China by myself without my parents that I started to really like fully appreciate my culture and understand it for what it was for me. And then I think that word authenticity has always been a really interesting word for me, because I'm still trying to figure out what exactly that means. I think authenticity is very personal, because even before when I was talking about General Tso's chicken, I think that's an authentic dish for a lot of people. Like, if you grew up eating that and that was Chinese food to you, that is authentic. And like for me, like, we didn't grow up eating General Tso's chicken, so it's not authentic to my personal story. And I'm like, even when I'm cooking for Shifan, I'm still figuring that out, because like a dish that we have is a pork and zucchini pot sticker, and you probably don't see that a lot in restaurants. And part of that is because my mom isn't from an area that makes a lot of dumplings or eats dumplings the way that my dad's family does. She learned how to make dumplings basically for my dad. And when they moved to the US, obviously he can't just go to a shop and buy it. My mom had to make it at home. I mean, she didn't have to. I mean, he could have, but she was the one who cooked in her house. But basically, like, when we lived in places like Kansas, I mean, nowadays you can get Napa cabbage everywhere, basically, but when we were growing up in Kansas, Napa cabbage was kind of hard to find. So my mom used zucchini because it's, you know, plentiful in the grocery stores, it's affordable, and that's why it was pork and zucchini, but that's what I grew up eating, and that became like if we had a pork dumpling, it was pork and zucchini. And that is authentic to me, and I'm still like, and it's interesting because we've done some fusion things, and then we've done things that people will call authentic, but like, I feel like they're both kind of authentic to me. And like a fun dessert we did was like a brown sugar boba creme brulee. So it is really good. One of my friends, Ramis, actually helped us with that recipe. And I grew up going to Cafe Bene, which is like, I think, a Korean chain coffee shop. And they used to have the creme brulee, and it was so good. I'm not a sweets person, but I love that, like, you know, the crunchy sugar with like the creamy on the bottom. And I also went to boba shops growing up when we went to Flushing, and on the weekends I sometimes grabbed some boba. So like, to me, the combination of the two things is authentic to my experience growing up. But would someone say, like, do you go to China and do you find boba creme brulee everywhere? Like, do people grow up eating it in their house? No. So like, I'm still figuring out what that means to me, because it's kind of like Chinese American, but also like most people haven't had it before. So I'm like, what is it? So I don't know if that answers your question, but I'm still figuring it out. Yeah.
I would say my answer is pretty similar to Angela's. I feel like authenticity for me is kind of, I'm figuring it out. But I grew up also in the States, and my parents are immigrants, but like I do think that I grew up at home, all the savory food was very much Chinese, Taiwanese food, like home style, very like no frills, but absolutely delicious. And I really missed that when I got older, and especially in college when my mom wasn't cooking food every single day anymore, or my grandma. And I really kind of fell in love with my culture at that point, where I just really missed the food that I had growing up. And so I started kind of taking things into my own hands and being like, all right, well, I need to learn how to make this stuff, but then I would ask my mom, and she would just be like, oh yeah, you just make it, you know, like, oh yeah, just like her recipes were very much not recipes at all, so it was like nothing I could actually follow. So now I still like am in a place of trying to figure out like, how do I make these things, but how do I make it my own, because my mom can teach me, but it's also not really like, she doesn't ever follow a recipe. It kind of is different every single time. So yeah, so I'm trying to remember like, trying to figure out how do I make these things and make them taste like I want them to taste, I guess, and making them kind of my own, even though they are still things of my childhood. But also, I grew up very much American, too, in the sense of, like, I love cookies. I love chocolate chip cookies. I love, just, like, I have a lot of memories eating cereal and just... and that's a huge part of my upbringing as well. So I do think Q, in a sense, is, like, me kind of combining the two and making what is authentic to me. And I would not say it's authentic Chinese or Taiwanese at all, but it is very much like authentic to like my taste and what I love, and kind of mixing the two things that I grew up eating in terms of flavors and like types of pastries, or like Even like our milk bread buns are very kind of like fusion in that like the milk bread itself is like what I remember going to Asian bakeries growing up, and like my favorite things. My favorite thing was going to the Asian bakery and getting something there, but also kind of adding the different flavor combinations that I really like now. Like things like Nutella or, things that might not necessarily be traditionally Chinese or Taiwanese, but is something that I just love in terms of having as a kid and wanting to incorporate that into something else that is really special to me. So I do think that is what we're doing, in that it is authentic to what I enjoy, and we'll probably continue figuring that out, though, as time goes on.
Thank you all. I think we have time for one more quick question, if possible. Raise your hand if you want. All right, we got one in the back.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for coming. Just a quick question, or two questions. One, what's your favorite thing to make? And two, recommend a spot in the Metro Detroit area, like Asian-owned, that you think that we should check out.
All right, who wants to start us off? Go ahead, Jasper.
So, whatever I can make with love, that's what I enjoy making. I'll just say that. I woke up and baked the cookies this morning, and my body was not cooperating, but I just did it. So I hope they tasted okay. I think that the same thing is there. People. I mean, Asian food it's like an ocean, so I don't know, what do you mean, Chinese food, or what do you mean, So I just think that there are, maybe not, I won't say just one name, but there are enough people out there that have Asian food restaurants that care about what they do. And they care about the quality of their food, they care about the quality of their ingredients, they care about representing their authenticity, as we talked about, in their culture. Yeah, there's plenty of wonderful Middle Eastern restaurants. I do have a complaint that I don't think we have enough great Chinese food here. So, but as you know, Angela's in the process of changing that. So yes, that's one place that I can think of going, which I'm waiting with bated breath.
I could go, yeah. I can start out with food wrecks. I mostly am in the Detroit area, but two restaurants, if you're in that area, like Metro Detroit, is one. I really like Detroit Pho and Crab. They are they're Vietnamese owned, but they also have crab boil, but I just love their pho. And then another is Chao Zhou. I just love their wok food. Just get their dry fried string beans. It's just so good. And then I also wanted to say, of course, Q Bakehouse. Genuinely so creative, and I just am in awe that you even, I imagine a bakery where it's just it's just a set menu, but the amount of creativity and effort that you go into testing new recipes and also sharing that process with people, it's incredible. So yes. And then what I like to make, I agree with you. Whatever's made with love, but also cooking with friends and, your loved ones. That's my boyfriend right there, Brian. He's a homie because when I didn't have a car, he's the one who drove. He made it out on his Sunday, which was his day to relax, to come help me. So, yeah. So I love cooking with him. So, yeah.
My favorite thing to make is what I want to eat at that moment. So it's usually cookies, I made Chinese food too, or Taiwanese food. Whatever I feel like making, I just my favorite thing at the moment is what I'm craving, and I want to make that thing so I can eat it. But it usually does end up being cookies, because it's always around 8 p.m. that I'm I want something to just nibble on and snack on, and then I often make chocolate chip cookies in particular. And in terms of recommendations, I think the things, I grew up in Troy, so I actually grew up in Metro Detroit and not necessarily in this area. So I have a lot of fond memories going to Type On Bakery in Madison Heights that I love, and think they're still there. Yeah, that, and then QQ Bakery, which I actually really hesitated to name the bakery Q initially because I was like, I don't want to steal from them, but it's also like we're far enough away and it's a little bit different. I know this is Japanese food, but I love Noble Fish so much, and their sushi is delicious, and their whole like concept now that they're like expanding a ton, I think is amazing. There and One World, which they also own in Novi, which is a little bit closer to here. I think that those are my regs.
All right, thank you all. All right, that brings us to our end. Really quick, if you guys could just give your one sentence. Last question. What's one thing you're really excited for your business in the near future? Give us your plugs for whatever you're working on.
I can go first real quick. So it's Lunar New Year on Tuesday, which is exciting. It's also Fat Tuesday on Tuesday, which is all like landing at the same time. But we are doing a Lunar New Year menu run for the next 2 weeks, starting this Wednesday, which will be really fun. It's not even finalized yet, so I don't exactly know what's going to be, but we're working on it. And then I actually have this pipe dream of opening a like specific Chinese brunch breakfast place. It's still very much in its infancy, and I don't even know if it's actually going to pan out because it will require a lot of things to fall into place. But I do hope eventually it'll either expand into that or it'll be something separate. But in terms of Q, though, that is our fun, like, we have Lunar New Year coming up, so please come and enjoy some fun Lunar New Year pastries.
I think I'm very excited that we're getting in the education business from the food business, or combining the two. So I'm really looking forward to sharing enough information about people, how to use food to heal themselves and for their emotional upliftment, and maybe a tea house. We'll see.
I have a lot of things I'm really excited about, but just like quickly, a couple is like, obviously opening up a space is very exciting, also very scary. 2 is I'm planning to do a tea sourcing trip in China in April. So I was like, I need to talk to you because you were talking about importing. I was like thinking about it, but I absolutely love tea, and it's been so meditative for me. I start every morning with like gongfu tea. We have like a tea set and everything. And then, of course, also Lunar New Year. I actually think one of the most exciting things for me about celebrating Lunar New Year is every year since I started the business, when I celebrate Lunar New Year, it's been just kind of like a scrap. Like we just go to like whatever restaurants open, and we just like, I'm so tired because we do so many like Lunar New Year events. So like I never really fully get to celebrate, even though that was like part of the reason why I started Fan Le. But this year, I put it in the calendar. I invited a couple friends over, so we're gonna make dumplings at home, and they're gonna wrap them in our house, even though it's tiny. But it's happening, and I'm really excited about it. So yeah, those are my things. Thank you.
Very exciting. Thank you all for sharing. That brings us to the end of the program. So on behalf of Maripo Acts, thank you very much to all of you for coming, those of you watching, and especially to our panelists. Thank you all for taking the time today to share your stories and lessons, challenges, and I hope everyone has learned a lot. I definitely have today, so thank you all. Last thing here, today we're announcing the official date of our June night market. This is the second annual June night market, the third in our night market series. And it'll be June 12th in Carytown again. You can RSVP right here already. And please do, if you do plan on coming, it actually really helps us to make sure that food does not run out. I think Cube actually ran out pretty quickly last year. Yeah, because the RSVPs and the actual attends did not align. So, please do so. Once again, just a reminder about the surveys. It really does mean a lot to us if you could fill those out and return them to the table or fill them out online. If you're watching online, please fill them out also digitally if possible. And lastly, we have a Discord server that exists already for Maripo Acts. If you'd like to get involved with volunteering, with staying up to date on the types of events that we're doing, anything at all. I think we very often post things about, good food places that we've been to recently, or, specials that are running. So anything like that, just feel free. Our Discord QR code is back there on the marble table, right there where Sarah's hand, lifting it. Thank you, Sarah. And yeah, thank you all once again for coming, and hope you all have a good day.